The World Health Organization has said processed meats like bacon can cause cancer. The review released on the 25th of October put processed meats in the same category as tobacco and asbestos. The study said eating around 2 strips of bacon daily could increase your risk for colon cancer by 18%. We caught up with Richard Bosman from Bacon on Brie to unpack the study.
What was your take on the study when you first heard about it?
First of all, the studies are all associative. So if you look at the baseline figures of the studies, the people who eat more processed meats tend to be more overweight. They're more likely to be smokers. They're more likely to be diabetic. So they are already less healthy as a control sample. So to then say, well, the processed meats have now caused the cancer is very misleading.
Now we have 3 plates of bacon in front of us. We have 2 from 2 different South African supermarkets, and one that's yours. You obviously hand make the bacon, you source the pigs, you see the process through from beginning to end. We're going to talk through some of the differences between the 3 and what consumers should be looking for when they're looking for a healthy processed meat to incorporate into their diet. So let's start off with the left-hand side.
Bacon number 1, the first item obviously is pork. That's the biggest ingredient in the packet. The second, and this is the same for both labels, the second ingredient is water. They've added water, they've pumped water into the product. It just allows them to increase the weight of the product, and it speeds up the curing process. Then we've got salt, which is obviously an important part of the curing process. This particular bacon has got phosphates that have been added as well, and when you add water into the muscle, phosphates help to keep the water in. The biggest differentiator for me is the source of the pork. So, that pork definitely wasn't free range, came from a feedlot. The animal was about 4 months old, it lived in a cage, it could move forwards and backwards. And I'd rather eat meat that I know, where it's come from and the fact that it started off being healthier.
Now, tell me how we can visually look at the bacon and pick out the quality. How can we tell what's better for us?
So if you look at these 2 bacons, this is quite a pale pink. It's very similar to the color of most of the pork you'd find in an average supermarket. And the color of this bacon here is a much darker, almost a red winey kind of a color. And that's caused by an active lifestyle, lots of oxygen in the muscle, which gives it a much darker color. If you're seeing a very pale, insipid looking bacon or processed meat product, that would really be an indicator of an animal that hasn't been allowed to move around a lot. If you have fresh meat, also there'll be no smell. It's like fresh fish. There's no smell at all.
No smell.
No smell at all.
Now earlier you said that the second bacon, I'm just going to put it here on the table, had colorants.
This has got a colorant added to it. It is on the ingredient declaration, so they haven't sort of tried to cover up anything. It could just be that they've wanted it to look like it was naturally smoked and put a brown colorant on the outside of the rind, or it could be that they've tried to make the color a bit more sort of rosy pink and appealing.
So the darker the better.
The darker the better, yeah.
Now, ever since this study came out, people have been freaking out about bacon. Should we all stop eating bacon?
Definitely not.
Because you would be out of business.
I would have to change my business, correct. But I think, Jen, the real thing for me is to understand actually what they are saying, because the press have blown it completely out of proportion. And I think if you look at the actual facts, it's not quite as cut and dried as maybe some of the headlines have suggested.